Welcome back to another project log. I had intended to put this video out earlier, but the first time I made the shirt, I essentially forgot to take footage because I was so preoccupied with figuring out how to actually put it together. I had always intended on making two shirts, so the second time around I actually took the footage, which is included in this video. I'm using the checked linen from Burnley and Trowbridge, and I work at a museum, and the reason why I wanted to make this shirt was so I could wear it with my uniform there. Linen is incredibly breathable, and it gets pretty hot in Toronto in the summer, so first thing I did was pre-wash it and serged it, and I was really stupid and serged over the selvage, which is totally unnecessary. First thing I did was create a pattern. The entire thing is made out of a series of rectangles and squares, and they're folded and sewn together to create reinforcement. The first thing I did was cut out the main body, which is cut on the fold, and on the exact fold line I cut the T-slit that you see here, just the long neck slit and then the slit down the chest. Here's a bit of a flat lay of what some of the pattern pieces look like. Again, you can see it's very clearly, the shapes are incredibly basic. One of the first things I did was fold back the neck seam and reinforce it with hand stitches, but the rest of the shirt is going to be machine sewn. I personally had a very hard time putting it together the first time around because I've never really made anything like this before, so it was challenging. Right now I'm preparing the triangular shoulder reinforcement. It's prepared the same way as the gussets, which you'll see later. I just pinned it onto the shirt and I'm going to sew it by machine. This triangular reinforcement is meant to, again, reinforce that cut that you've already put in there. And then on top of that goes a rectangular shoulder reinforcement that kind of goes over the shoulder and down the arm. The next step was preparing the collar. I folded back the seam allowance on one half and then gathered the shirt, placed the collar above the gathers, and then used the folded back side as a reference on seam allowance for the other side. So I pinned the other side up of the proper seam allowance where it needed to be and then sewed it all together. I don't know if I'm explaining it exactly the right way, but hopefully the visuals help to explain a little bit more than I have. For reference, the cuffs are prepared the exact same way. I let the project sit for a bit, so I consulted my trusty sewing notebook. Then the next thing I started preparing were the underarm gussets. So gussets are pretty tricky. I'll link to a video that I used that helped me a lot. But they're prepared in essentially the same way. I folded back the seam allowance, and then I took a air fade. It's a marker that just fades over time. And I made points on each of the corners of the gusset. Now the reason why is because, well, first of all, the marker is dark so I can see it on the light fabric, but you really want to make sure when you're sewing a gusset that the needle stops exactly at the point. Because if you're sewing and they don't line up exactly, you could leave parts of the fabric that haven't been sewn together and it makes a hole. So I pinned on the gusset and I sewed it by machine. This was my first time sewing gussets. Actually no, second time. And I kind of think I have the hang of it now. But as you'll see in a little bit, I've complicated my life by flat felling every single seam on this project. So trying to flat fell a gusset seam that also has gathers was kind of a nightmare. But it looks really good. So it's fine. I'm okay with it. And I've just pinned the gussets into the main body of the shirt along with the rest of the sleeve, sewed it shut, prepared the cuffs the same way as the collar, did the hem, just about a ½ inch, really small, and I just finished it all up with hand sewing buttonholes and hand sewing the buttons onto it. I'm very pleased with how it turned out. It served me very well throughout the summer. And while I don't have much historical stuff to pair with it, I do find that when I'm not at work, it goes very well with a nice pair of jeans.